Let this be the only thing to come between us, huh? Yeah.
Bruno Mars was once the face of nonstop hits, unforgettable performances, and pure star power. But now, as he approaches 40, things look very different. From chart-topping success to personal struggles and a career that isn't what it used to be, his story has taken a surprising turn. Join us as we break down the rise, the setbacks, and the reality of Bruno Mars today. Born for fame. Bruno Mars, born Peter Gene Hernandez on October 8, 1985, grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii, in a family where music was at the center of everyday life. His childhood was not an ordinary one, because while most kids his age were playing outside or watching cartoons, he was already surrounded by instruments, rehearsals, and performances. His father, Peter Hernandez, was originally from Brooklyn, New York, and of Puerto Rican and Jewish heritage. He worked as a percussionist, playing instruments like congas and bongos. His mother, Bernadette Bernie San Pedro Bayot, was a singer and hula dancer who moved to Hawaii from the Philippines. Together, his parents created a household that revolved around rhythm, song, and stage presence. By the time Bruno was just a toddler, he was already standing on stage. His father ran a family band called the Love Notes that performed in Waikiki, and little Bruno became part of the act. He quickly earned a reputation as Little Elvis because of his uncanny ability to imitate the king of rock and roll. Dressed in a tiny jumpsuit with slicked-back hair, he would sing Elvis Presley's songs with confidence and charm that shocked audiences. At just 4 years old, he was already stealing the show. People who came to see his family perform were often surprised by how well he could capture Elvis's moves and energy. This made him a local sensation. Bruno even landed a cameo in the film Honeymoon in Vegas in 1992, where he appeared as a mini Elvis impersonator. Media outlets in Hawaii caught on to his talent too. He was featured in magazines and newspapers as one of the youngest Elvis impersonators in the world. Despite the joy of performing, life at home was not always easy. His family did not have much money, and there were times when they struggled. Bruno has spoken about how these challenges shaped his determination to succeed. Even when his home life was tough, he could always turn to music as an escape. It gave him a sense of purpose and a dream to hold on to. By the time Bruno was a teenager, it was clear that he wanted more than local fame. Performing in Hawaii was a good start, but he knew the big opportunities were on the mainland. At just 17 years old, after finishing high school, he left home and moved to Los Angeles. It was a huge decision for someone so young, especially since he didn't have much money or a clear plan for success. But he carried with him years of experience and an unshakable belief in his talent. The early years in Los Angeles were far from glamorous. Bruno faced rejection after rejection from record labels who didn't know how to market him. Some said he was too different. Others didn't believe in his style. He took on small jobs to support himself while continuing to chase his dream of breaking into the music industry. Money was tight, and there were times when he doubted if he had made the right choice. Still, he refused to give up. Even with all of these struggles, Bruno's big break was just around the corner, and the world was about to find out who he really was. The struggling songwriter. When Bruno Mars first arrived in Los Angeles as a teenager, he thought his years of performing in Hawaii would quickly turn into stardom. But the reality of the music industry was very different from what he had imagined. Even though he had the voice, the stage presence, and the ambition, record labels did not know what to do with him. They didn't see a clear box to put him in, and that left him with very few chances to step into the spotlight. Instead of giving up, Bruno began working behind the scenes, trying to get his foot in the door in any way possible. During his first years in Los Angeles, Bruno took whatever opportunities he could find to survive. He was rejected by several labels who told him he didn't look or sound like what they wanted. That rejection stung, but it also forced him to think differently. He realized that if people weren't ready to accept him as a singer, then maybe they would accept him as a songwriter. This shift became his way forward. Bruno began focusing on writing songs for other artists. His talent for melodies and catchy hooks was undeniable, and it quickly caught the attention of producers and musicians looking for fresh material. Early on, he co-wrote songs for artists like Brandy, Sean Kingston, Adam Levine, and Flo Rida. At this stage, he was not a household name, and most people listening to these songs had no idea who Bruno Mars was. But within the industry, his reputation as a songwriter was starting to grow. Around this time, Bruno met Philip Lawrence, a songwriter and singer who shared the same struggles and dreams. They hit it off quickly and decided to team up. Soon after, they connected with engineer and producer Ari Levine. Together, the three of them formed a production and songwriting team they called the Smeezingtons. This partnership was one of the most important turning points in Bruno's career. As the Smeezingtons, the trio began working with some of the biggest names in music. They were behind hits for artists like CeeLo Green, Travie McCoy, B.O.B., and Kanan. Each project gave them more credibility and more doors to knock on. The group's breakthrough moment came with B.O.B.'s Nothin' on You in 2010. Bruno not only co-wrote the song, but he also sang the hook. The track was a massive success, hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earning Grammy nominations. For the first time, Bruno's voice was being heard by millions, even though he was technically still working behind the scenes. That same year, the Smeezingtons helped craft Travie McCoy's Billionaire, another chart-topping song with Bruno featured on the chorus. These hits proved that Bruno wasn't just a background songwriter, he had the charisma and sound to be in the front. The world was starting to notice. Despite the success with the Smeezingtons, Bruno still faced a lot of rejection in the years leading up to his breakthrough as a solo artist. Early on, executives told him that he wasn't marketable enough to be the face of an album. Some didn't understand how to categorize his music, since it blended pop, R&B, funk, reggae, and soul. Others didn't think his look or style fit the typical mold of a pop star at the time. Instead of giving up, Bruno used those years to sharpen his craft. Writing for different artists allowed him to experiment with sounds, structures, and styles. He studied what made songs connect with people, and he applied those lessons to his own music. While the labels doubted his marketability, Bruno was quietly preparing himself to prove them wrong. Breakthrough to stardom. Bruno's rise began when he was featured on B.O.B.'s single Nothin' on You in 2009. He not only co-wrote the track, but also sang the smooth, emotional chorus. The song became a worldwide hit, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and staying there for multiple weeks. It was also a commercial success overseas, topping charts in the UK and other countries. For many listeners, this was their very first time hearing Bruno's voice, and it immediately stood out. His blend of warmth and power in the chorus made the song unforgettable. Not long after, Travie McCoy released Billionaire in 2010, another track that Bruno co-wrote and performed on. Once again, he was on the chorus, delivering a catchy and playful hook about wanting to live the life of luxury. The song reached the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the summer's biggest hits. By now, Bruno's voice had become familiar to millions, and his name was starting to appear everywhere in music headlines. These two collaborations were important because they proved he wasn't just a behind-the-scenes writer. He had the charisma and vocal talent to be in the front. Audiences began to recognize that the same person behind these hooks was capable of doing much more. After years of waiting, Bruno finally released his debut solo single, Just the Way You Are, in July 2010. The song was a heartfelt ballad about unconditional love and admiration. It quickly became a global sensation. The track debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed at the top for 4 weeks. It also topped charts in several other countries, including the UK, Canada, and Australia. The song's success was massive. It sold millions of copies, became a wedding favorite, and was played endlessly on radio stations around the world. For Bruno, it was the ultimate confirmation that he had arrived as a solo artist. The public had embraced him, not just as a featured guest on someone else's song, but as a star in his own right. Along with his chart success, Bruno also began receiving recognition from the music industry. His work during this time earned him several Grammy nominations. In 2011, Just the Way You Are won the Grammy Award for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance. This win was an important milestone because it proved that critics and industry professionals respected him just as much as fans did. His Grammy performances also helped solidify his reputation as a showman. Unlike many artists who depended heavily on production, Bruno's live performances were built around his strong voice, his band, and his natural to connect with audiences. Whether he was singing a ballad or performing an upbeat song, he showed a confidence on stage that made him stand out from many other new artists. Bruno's debut album, Doo-Wops and Hooligans, was released in October 2010. The album was a mix of pop, R&B, reggae, and soul, reflecting the wide variety of influences from his childhood and songwriting career. It wasn't just one type of sound, it was a collection that showed how versatile Bruno could be. The album included hit singles like Grenade, The Lazy Song, Marry You, and Count on Me. Each song highlighted a different side of his artistry. Grenade was a dramatic ballad about heartbreak, while The Lazy Song was light-hearted and playful. Marry You became popular as a proposal and wedding song, and Count on Me was a gentle acoustic tune that showed off his softer side. Doo-Wops and Hooligans was a commercial success, selling millions of copies worldwide. It reached number 3 on the Billboard 200 chart in the United States and charted highly in several other countries. Critics praised Bruno for his ability to mix old-school influences with modern pop sounds. Fans loved the honesty and variety in his music. By the end of 2011, Bruno Mars had achieved what many artists spend years chasing. He had chart-topping singles, a Grammy win, a best-selling debut album, and worldwide fame. The years of rejection and struggle in Los Angeles were behind him, and he had become one of the most important new voices in pop music. But fame also brought new pressures, and soon Bruno would face challenges that tested both his image and his personal life. Bruno's relationships. As Bruno's fame grew, so did public interest in his personal life. He was linked to a few high-profile romances early in his career, including model and actress Rita Ora. However, one relationship in particular became central to his story. Since 2011, Bruno has been in a long-term relationship with Jessica Caban, a model and actress. Unlike many celebrities, he has kept this relationship relatively private, though the two have occasionally appeared together at events. Bruno has often spoken about how difficult it can be to balance fame with personal privacy. The attention of the media and fans made it hard to keep his personal life separate from his career. He valued privacy, but the world wanted details about his relationships, family, and lifestyle. Despite this, Bruno managed to avoid many of the scandals that often follow stars at his level of fame. He preferred to let his music and performances speak louder than the headlines. His family also remained an important part of his life. Bruno faced heartbreak when his mother, Bernadette, passed away in 2013 from a brain aneurysm. It was a devastating loss, and he later admitted that it changed him forever. Still, he carried her memory with him, often crediting her for inspiring his love of music. Bruno Mars had built himself into a superstar, admired not only for his chart-topping hits, but also for his showmanship, style, and ability to stay grounded in a world of constant attention. But even as his fame grew, Bruno would soon face setbacks and controversies that tested everything he had worked so hard to build. Arrests and lawsuits. One of the first major setbacks in Bruno's career came in September 2010, just as his fame was beginning to skyrocket. While celebrating in Las Vegas after a show, he was arrested at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. Police reported finding him in a bathroom with a small amount of cocaine. At the time, this news shocked fans because Bruno had been building an image as a polished, upbeat performer who stayed away from negative behavior. The arrest led to a cocaine possession charge. Bruno cooperated with authorities and admitted his mistake. In court, he was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service, undergo drug counseling, and pay a fine. He also had to stay out of trouble for a full year in order to avoid jail time. While some feared the arrest could ruin his rising career, Bruno handled the aftermath carefully. He apologized publicly, calling it a poor decision and promising to focus on his music. By taking responsibility and completing the requirements, he was able to rebuild his reputation fairly quickly. Within months, his singles continued climbing the charts, and fans were willing to move forward with him. Still, the incident remains one of the most talked-about low points in his personal history. Bruno's next major controversy came in 2014, but this time it was tied to one of his biggest successes. His hit song Uptown Funk, a collaboration with producer Mark Ronson, became one of the most popular tracks of the decade. The song topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 14 weeks, sold millions worldwide, and won multiple Grammy Awards. But as its success grew, so did accusations that it borrowed too heavily from older funk and R&B songs. Several groups came forward with lawsuits, claiming that Uptown Funk copied parts of their work. The most notable was a case involving the 1970s funk band, the Gap Band, who argued that the song's rhythm and feel were too similar to their track Oops Upside Your Head. Eventually, the Gap Band members were added to the song's list of credited writers after a settlement. In 2018, Bruno Mars faced another wave of criticism, this time over cultural appropriation. Some critics argued that Bruno, who is of Filipino, Puerto Rican, and Jewish descent, was profiting from African-American musical traditions like funk, soul, R&B, and hip-hop without being part of that culture himself. The debate grew after he won several Grammy Awards for 24K Magic, an album deeply inspired by 1980s and 1990s black music. Online discussions turned heated, with one viral video accusing Bruno of stealing black culture to build his career. Many fans defended him, pointing out that Bruno had always been open about his influences and had worked with numerous black artists throughout his career. They argued that his music was a tribute rather than exploitation. Still, the accusations sparked conversations about authenticity, ownership, and representation in the music industry. For Bruno, the controversy was damaging because it struck at the heart of his image. He had always been celebrated as someone who brought joy and nostalgia through his music. But now, some were questioning whether that joy came at the expense of others. Though the debate eventually faded, it left behind a shadow that reminded him of how easily public opinion can shift. While Bruno was celebrated for his music, reports also began to surface about financial troubles behind the scenes. Despite his chart-topping hits, sold-out tours, and Las Vegas residencies, there were claims of mounting debts caused by extravagant spending. Bruno was known for living lavishly, with luxury homes, cars, and parties adding to the expenses. Media outlets reported that he had faced issues with taxes and business management, leading to legal disputes and large financial settlements. Some sources claimed he had millions in debt despite his ongoing success. For fans, it was hard to understand how someone so successful could face such struggles. But it showed how quickly money can slip away in the entertainment industry. These troubles forced Bruno to depend more heavily on residencies in Las Vegas, where consistent shows provided reliable income. While profitable, residencies are often seen as a step away from the height of mainstream stardom, leading to speculation that his financial problems had limited his choices. Bruno Mars had survived legal troubles, lawsuits, criticism, and financial challenges, but each scandal left a mark on his carefully built image. And as the setbacks piled up, the question became whether Bruno could keep his superstar glow, or if the weight of it all would eventually dim his shine. The decline of a star. In 2016, Bruno released his third studio album, 24K Magic. The project was a loud, colorful celebration of funk, R&B, and 1990s party culture. Songs like 24K Magic, That's What I Like, and Finesse became instant hits, dominating radio and streaming platforms. The album felt like a complete package, glamorous, energetic, and designed for both dancing and singing along. The success of 24K Magic was enormous. Bruno launched a world tour that sold out arenas and stadiums around the globe. Audiences praised his stage presence, choreography, and band, the Hooligans, for creating one of the best live shows in pop music. By this time, Bruno had perfected his image as a showman. The industry rewarded him as well. At the 2018 Grammy Awards, 24K Magic swept the major categories. He won Album of the Year, Record of the Year, and Song of the Year, alongside several other trophies. It was one of the most dominant Grammy nights of the decade. For Bruno, it was the peak of recognition, showing that both fans and critics saw him as the complete artist. But in many ways, 24K Magic also represented the height of his career. With such overwhelming success, the question became, where could he go from there? After the whirlwind of 24K Magic, Bruno took a long break from releasing solo music. When he finally returned, it was as part of a new project. In 2021, he teamed up with Anderson .Paak to form the duo Silk Sonic. Together, they released the single Leave the Door Open, a silky, soulful ballad that recalled the sound of 1970s R&B groups. The song was an immediate success, debuting at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earning praise for its vocals and production. Silk Sonic followed up with an album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, which included other tracks like Smokin' Out the Window and Fly As Me. The project earned Grammy Awards and brought both Bruno and Anderson acclaim for their chemistry and artistry. Fans and critics admired the craftsmanship. The album was smooth, nostalgic, and well put together. Yet, at the same time, some felt it leaned too heavily on retro influences. Bruno had always borrowed from past genres, but with Silk Sonic, the sound seemed completely rooted in nostalgia. For some, this was brilliance, an artist mastering old styles and bringing them back to life. For others, it felt like overkill, with Bruno relying too much on the past, rather than pushing forward into something new. Despite its success, Silk Sonic didn't have the same cultural impact as Bruno's earlier solo work. It won awards and respect, but it didn't dominate the charts or capture the global spotlight in the same way 24K Magic had. After Silk Sonic, Bruno Mars's activity as a recording artist slowed even more. Unlike his earlier years, when he seemed to always have a new hit on the charts, Bruno became quiet. He hasn't released a solo album since 24K Magic in 2016, leaving fans waiting years for new material. In a music industry that moves quickly, such a long gap made it easy for newer artists to take the spotlight. Instead of focusing on new music, Bruno began putting more energy into live performances, especially his residencies in Las Vegas. These shows allowed him to continue performing for fans while earning steady income. His residency at venues like the Park MGM was popular and well-reviewed, but residencies are often viewed as a sign that an artist's days of dominating global charts are behind them. Rather than touring the world with new hits, Bruno was performing older material for audiences who wanted to relive his past successes. This shift marked a turning point. While Bruno Mars remained a respected performer with undeniable talent, his career seemed to have slowed. The nonstop momentum that had once carried him from one hit to the next had disappeared. In its place was a quieter, more predictable rhythm. And as time went on, fans began to wonder, what exactly was life like for Bruno Mars now? Bruno Mars today. Bruno Mars is now approaching 40, and his career looks very different compared to the early years when he seemed to own the music industry. Once one of the most reliable hitmakers in pop, he has become much quieter in recent years. The constant flow of new singles, award wins, and world tours has slowed down, leaving many fans wondering what has happened to the star who once dominated the charts. As he gets older, Bruno seems to be focusing less on chasing mainstream trends. He no longer feels like the unstoppable presence he once was, and this shift has led many to see him as fading from the spotlight. For a performer who built his career on being everywhere at once, the silence is striking. Instead of dominating global tours, Bruno has spent much of the last few years performing in Las Vegas. He has had long-running residencies at major venues, such as the Park MGM. These shows are popular with audiences, and reviews often praise the quality of his performances. Bruno continues to give fans what they want: strong vocals, tight choreography, and the same charm that made him famous. But residencies come with a different reputation compared to international tours. They are reliable, consistent, and financially rewarding, but they also signal a step down from global superstardom. For many, Las Vegas residencies are seen as a place where artists go when their days of constant chart-topping success are behind them. Bruno may still deliver great performances, but the setting feels smaller than the world stage he once ruled. Behind the scenes, there have been reports that Bruno's reliance on residencies is tied to financial problems. Despite his massive success, he has faced claims of mounting tax debts and heavy spending. Luxury homes, cars, and an extravagant lifestyle may have caught up with him. While exact numbers are difficult to confirm, the rumors have been strong enough to shape the public's perception of him. For someone who sold millions of records and played to sold-out arenas, the idea of financial struggles seems surprising. Yet the music industry is full of examples of stars who lost control of their wealth, and Bruno has not escaped the speculation. The suggestion that he is depending on steady Las Vegas income to cover debts has fueled the idea that his career is no longer as secure as it once appeared. Another part of Bruno's quieter life today comes from his retreat from the public eye. Unlike earlier in his career, when he was everywhere in interviews and media, he now keeps a much lower profile. There has been speculation that years of non-stop performing may have taken a toll on his health, though Bruno himself has not shared many details. Constant touring, rehearsing, and performing at the high energy level he is known for can wear down even the strongest performers. Bruno has also been more private about his personal life in recent years. He has been in a long-term relationship with Jessica Cabin, but the couple stays away from the spotlight. This retreat has made him harder to follow, adding to the sense that he has stepped back from the world that once celebrated him so loudly. For many fans, the contrast between Bruno Mars then and Bruno Mars now feels dramatic. He was once the embodiment of joy, confidence, and showmanship, with a career built on energy and innovation. Today, he is seen by some as a fading figure, relying on past hits and nostalgia to keep his career alive. His live shows still shine, but they are fueled more by songs from his peak years than by new creations. Instead of setting the direction of pop music as he once did, Bruno is now surviving on the foundation he built years ago. Nostalgia has become the main force keeping his career afloat. To some, this feels like a sad reality for an artist who once seemed unstoppable. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.